Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing another Few Cents mini episode before we drop our full-length episode this Thursday. Danny, I got a good quote I wanted to share with you and thought we'd
awesome.
just chat about it for a minute.
Yeah.
This one's by Mr. Benjamin Franklin.
Okay. Hopefully it's an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah. Yeah. The quote that I found goes something along the lines of this. Beware of little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship.
Okay.
Yeah, what comes to mind when you hear that quote? What's the first thing you think
First
of?
off, jokingly, no more coffee runs. Little expenses, right? But yeah, getting control of your spending. And if you don't know what you're spending or you don't have some budgeting in place, then it's very easy to spend small amounts on stuff every day. And it adds up over time. If you spend $10, right, $10 a day on random things, and there's 365 days in a year, then at the end of that year, you've just spent over or on your way to $4,000.
Right.
So it adds up. And if you had, let's say, invested that $4,000, that can grow to a lot, especially if you're investing it early in life and then letting it compound.
The first thing I thought of when I read that quote was our episode 8, the budgeting imperative.
Okay.
That reminded me of some things we talked about there that seem relevant to the quote. But, if you're, not to make a lame joke about our KYS, know your stuff, but let's take the ship analogy that Ben Franklin gave us here. KYS, know your ship, right? Like if there are holes in it and there's a small leak here and there, it's going to catch up on you, especially if you don't know those leaks are happening. That's the whole point of knowing your ship, or in our case, knowing your stuff.
Okay, that's fair.
I want to flip this concept really quick, right? Because it's easy to draw the analogy to spending and like these expenses, little expenses add up, right? But let's flip it to the savings side.
Okay.
How many dollars does it take to get to 1 million?
Is this a trick question?
No.
Okay.
It's 1 million $1 bills, right? Like,
I feel like that's kind of a trick question. It's
maybe
$1 million
it is.
$1 bills.
Yeah. $1 million is made up of 1 million $1 bills.
Okay.
And there are two ways you can make up that sum, either by contributing everything you can towards a $1 million goal, if I'm just using this as a hypothetical goal here, and the growth that any of your savings or investments yield also produce dollar bills that contribute towards this goal, right?
It's also made up of 100 million pennies.
Oh, I'm not a penny pincher, but I do appreciate the numbers there, Danny.
True. I won't even bend down to pick a penny up.
Your hourly rate from lifestyle returns is just much greater than bending over to pick up a penny, right? You can better spend elsewhere. Back to the point, though. Think about this for a minute. I want to go back to something I said on another Few Cents episode we did, where I proposed the would you rather have $1,000 now or 1,100 15 months from now, right?
Okay.
When I proposed it in terms of dollars, it didn't seem as enticing. But if I'd never told you what dollar amount you'll get in the future, I just gave you a return like 10.54% in the $1,300 30-month example I gave, that sounds much more enticing. Because most people, when they look at a bank account or a high yield savings or annualized investment returns, most people are not immediately calculating in their head, oh, that's this much in terms of dollar amounts, right?
Correct.
They just see the percentage and they think that's awesome. But some people have this mindset of stop worrying about how much you're spending on coffee or these little things, right? These little leaks in your ship, if you will. That's not going to move the needle to getting you to saving $1 million, for example. I'm going to disagree because people underestimate just how much they need to be contributing early on.
Okay.
In order for their portfolio to hit critical mass to the point where the returns themselves are then driving the portfolio, right? Here's a story I've got. I was working with a client once some years ago, and they wanted to contribute towards their grandchild's education. So they opened a 529 account.
Okay.
They put $500 in it. They didn't have a lot of money to put towards this goal, but they put in $500. And 2 years later, they came in and they were asking like, hey, how's the 529 doing that I opened for my grandchild? Like, oh, it's really doing well. And they were like, well, how much money's in there now? And I think we said something like, I don't know, $700 or $800.
Okay.
Right? And they had a comment like, I put that in 2 years ago. How has it only grown to $800? I put in 500 2 years ago. And I had this breakthrough in my head. I was like, whoa, like you had an annualized return over the past 2 years of in the 20%.
That's
right?
amazing.
Like it was like 23 or 25% annualized return for 2 years in a row because it was a really hot period in the market, right? It was a bull run. And they couldn't believe that the account wasn't a couple $1,000s, right? Like, 2 years have passed. What's going on? And it just really opened up my mind to this concept that even with those great returns, that's not going to move the needle. Contributing a lot in the beginning is going to move that needle. And how do you contribute? You're mindful of where your dollars are going. If you're
That's true.
incrementally spending a lot on these little leaks in your ship, it's going to be difficult to get those contributions going, right? $500 growing at 20+% annualized is great, but imagine if you were contributing 1,000 every year, or
let's
5,000
take it
every
up.
year.
Let's say you lump sum invested $100,000, right? And it's 20% every year. I mean, what do you end up with then? It's
right.
It's a huge number comparative. I mean, you wouldn't have quite hit 200K, but you'd be looking over 150,000 at that point, right?
Yeah. Probably around 150 plus. Yep. And that's when you can start to get a glimpse of like, oh, okay, this dollar amount's starting to hit critical mass. And now when these returns hit, they really swing that dollar value up.
Absolutely.
And so that's just to emphasize, just how important it is to focus on contributions early on, not returns. People get so obsessed about chasing returns when in reality, you should be really focusing on increasing those contributions until they hit a mass level of assets.
Get that capital into the market to work for you now. And, a decade from now, if you have been consistent with it, you are going to see enormous benefits from that. You have to have that capital in the market, and you have to give it time in the market, right? It's not a get rich quick scheme. And if anyone tries to sell you on that, run away, because it takes diligence and time, and then you'll eventually get to the point where that compound growth has your portfolio and your investments working harder than even what you yourself can contribute on an annual basis.
Absolutely. There will be a day where you are not able to contribute enough to exceed what the portfolio itself is then growing by just on its returns alone. But until you hit that point, you've got to contribute more. And I know it's a small leak will sink a great ship. It's talking about expenses, but it's an interesting thought experiment to think about that quote and how you can flip it and spin it when it comes to actually saving those dollars.
Yeah.
Because people underestimate just how impactful they are.
I want to add in, I don't want people to go crazy over those small expenses. Basically, you have to get a handle on them, pare them down, get your savings and your finances to where they need to be, and then you can add back in those expenses that really matter to you and that improve your day-to-day life.
Nice. Yeah, that's well said. Awesome. Well, Danny, thanks for entertaining me with this quote. And
you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin Franklin, for that quote. And to our listeners, hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you this Thursday.